Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cooking in Mexican from A to Z. I'm your host, Aaron Sanchez, alongside my beautiful mother,
Sarela Martinez.
And we're talking about season 4 of this wonderful podcast, Cooking in Mexico from A to Z. We are embarking in episode 5, so we appreciate all of your support and your enthusiasm of what our content is and our wonderful guests that continue to grace the airwaves as it is, and estamos muy agradecidos a todo el apoyo y todo lo que hacen ustedes para soportar nuestro podcast. And here we are. We're talking about a very interesting subject, Mom, and I know this is very near to dear to you. But we're talking about cooking with flowers in the Mexican kitchen, in la cocina, and las recetas and the recipes that spawn from that. And we have an unbelievable guest here, and we are very excited about this. And it's my tocayo, his last name is Sanchez. Lesterloon Sanchez, of course, is what we're talking about. And he is the foremost expert of cooking with flowers in the Mexican diaspora and the cuisine. He hails from the beautiful state of Veracruz, Jarocho all the way, 100%. And let me just give you a little bit of background on Señor Lesterloon. He's an author and penned 3 books. Endemic Edible Flowers of Veracruz, which came out in 2013, Flowers in the Veracruzana Kitchen in 2018, and then, of course, his most recent beautiful book is the recipe book of Jalapeno the Regional Basket, which is led him in his research to discover new flowers that no one has ever heard of. And I think a lot of people take for granted how it has a way of interweaving itself in modern-day cuisine, in Mexico especially. He's the chef at Restaurant Macura in Veracruz, traditional Veracruzan restaurant. And so he comes with unbelievable accolades, as you can imagine. So I just want to welcome him on behalf of my mama and my jefa and you. So welcome, Lesterloon.
Thanks. It is a great pleasure to be here with you. So I admire you both, Sarela and Aaron. Of course, firstly to Sarela, who met many years ago here in Veracruz. There are not words to express my admiration for someone who has worked so hard to promote Mexican cuisine. And by the way, she's still doing it. So I fondly remember those afternoons at La Nostalgia Kitchen, or sitting at a great table full of food in someone old house in Jico. I still keep your book. Very lovely. Sarela's Veracruz. I love that. Of course, Aaron, you have given voice to the many Latinos around the world. Many could see you as an example to follow. So, congratulations. I'm so happy to be here with both. I want to apologize in advance for any mistakes I might make. My accent is terrible, my pronunciation too. I'm like a infrastructure president, and I don't have much practice nowadays, so I'm so
You
sorry.
know, you don't need practice. You know, I have a story about when we met. You know, he had this. Did you marry the girl that you were with then? Is that the girl that you dedicated the book to?
Yeah,
Yeah. So anyway, he was with this couple, an adorable girl, and he. I don't know what the deal was, but he wanted to connect with me, and I said, if you're serious, let's make some dishes for me today. And this was like market day, and it was like so anyway. By 6 o'clock at night, he had made two extraordinary dishes, and I said, "This guy's gonna make it."
yes,
Absolutely.
I don't forget.
So let's talk a little bit, and I'm sure we're going to touch a lot about the stories because I think, Mom, one of the things that you always say is that I'm a Mexican that didn't know my own country. And you start to travel within your own country to understand it. And Veracruz, apart from Oaxaca, spoke a lot to you. And it just opened up all of your sensory and your appreciation for our cultura and our patria. And then, through all that, you've learned specifically about, food from Veracruz, obviously. But let's talk about the ideas of flowers and how they play into the Mexican cuisine.
Can I just make
And
a quick description of Veracruz? It is a 400-mile long state. It borders on 7 different regions, so it has 7 regional cuisines in a way. But the cooking of the mountains is flowers, mushrooms, elites, those kind of vegetables, and they have some beef. And then the other side is Afro-Mexican mostly and Mediterranean. Is that a good description, Lesterloon?
Yeah, that's a great
So
description.
the first flavors that I had with flowers there were ¿cómo se llaman? The red ones, cascaritos.
Yeah, it's a edible flower.
That a lot of people use as a substitute for for meat. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about those flowers that you cook with the most.
Well, I start to talking about my book. I decided to write this book 6 years ago when I finished studying at SGAMEX with Yuri de Gortari and Edmundo Escamilla. Rest in peace. They pushed me in many ways to achieve it. So first, I tried to seek help from specialists like botanicals and anthropologists and researchers who had worked on the subject, edible flowers. And I didn't have an encouraging outlook. And they told me, you won't find more edible flowers than we have found. That's the idea. Um, at that time, there were around 10 or 12 edible flowers registered in Veracruz. So I don't care. I decide to travel around Veracruz, North Veracruz, Middle Veracruz, South Veracruz, um, and try to looking for any flowers that were not registered yet. My surprise was enormous when I found many other flowers that were used for food here in Veracruz. I mean, unregistered flowers. Currently, or nowadays, my work includes 65 flowers, edible flowers, and more than 300 receipts.
wow.
We are talking about a 6 years investigation.
N-
So there are a lot of edible flowers here in Veracruz
Now,
that
and
I
through your
found.
research, Lester Loon, like, have you ever? Because people might be very concerned about eating a flower, because they could be considered poisonous. Now, how was that process in your research? Were you ever concerned, or se corrió un problema, algo así, durante, all your viajes and all that? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I think flowers or edible flowers is something that start in uh, pre-Hispanic Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about edible flowers, we talk about something that have 2,000 years
The historia,
happen.
yeah, the history.
¿Ya?
You
O sea,
know,
tenemos 200 años, 2000 años, 4000 años comiendo flores.
Ándale.
I told Lesterloon that you wanted to have somebody on to talk about pre-Hispanic foods. And he said to me, that ended 500 years ago.
I love it.
We have indigenous food now.
I love it.
And that's I think that's a very interesting point to bring up, So
Yeah, I think something like that. Pre-Hispanic cuisine is something that has already happened.
Great.
Yeah, while the indigenous cuisine is still alive. A lot of the information of the recipes in my book come from that Veracruz that is still alive, called Afro-descent
Yes.
or indigenous. Yeah, maybe Hispanic influence or totally mestizo. That's Veracruz. Well, we cannot deny that food with edible flowers has origin in the pre-Hispanic times. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but of course the influence remained in Mexico thanks to our indigenous roots.
Yep.
Although European also ate flowers.
Yes.
African ate flowers. That's the reason why we have roses and hibiscus flowers in the Veracruz cuisine.
Yes.
So I try to explain that cooking with edible flowers is very complex, and it doesn't end in the pre-Hispanic times. It continues for 500 years, creating a new way of eating, which sometimes called Veracruzan cuisine.
Yes.
And it's very evident in the edible flowers. Someone else told me sometime Mexican are flower eaters. And that's true. Not only our flowers, we also learn to eat another flowers, yeah, like Hispanic flowers or African flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
do you feature any dishes with flowers in your menu in your restaurant in Jalapa, Mucara?
I have a lot of them. For example, I have enchiladas de nata
Uh-huh.
con flores de
Oh
calabaza.
my God, that's really delicious.
That's a wonderful dish.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because for everyone that doesn't know about some of the more popular flowers that are used in Mexican cuisine, I think the first one we have to acknowledge is the flor de calabaza, no? Right? The zucchini flower, no? It probably has the most recognition, right? I think we can agree as far as that. But then you move into the hibiscus or the jamaica, like you said, which is it in the sorrel family or is it a violet? Because I'm kind of interested in the idea of jamaica and the hibiscus plant, the flower, I should say. So let's talk a little bit about the most recognizable flowers that are used. No, what do you think for our listeners?
Yeah, I think we have maybe 3 or 4 flowers. For example, isote flower. There are a lot of recipes with isote flower. Maybe also something that Sarella said, Gasparito flower. It's also a lot. There are a lot of recipes with Gasparito flower. Of course, squash blossom. Yeah, there are a lot of recipes.
How about the orchids?
My book is right with the scientific names.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's important. For example, it's isote flower. It's called Yucca guatemalensis.
Okay.
So it's the same thing in English, French, or Spanish because we use the scientific name. So we have Yucca guatemalensis, or Gasparito flower is called It's called Erythrina americana, for example. So my book uh, have these scientific names, and it's so important.
Are the gasparitos available anywhere in the United States, the plants?
Yes, I think so. For example, the isote flowers. Somebody told me that she found isote flowers in LA,
Yeah, they're beautiful
Los
white
Angeles.
flowers that come on a yucca. And when is the season? ¿Cuándo es la temporada?
La mayor cantidad de flores, his
En la primavera,
start
no,
on
okay, so in the
primavera.
spring is the majority,
Spring.
no? Is what we're trying, yeah, or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's not only spring.
Mhm.
We can find a lot of flowers in January or December.
In the hotter places?
It depends. Yeah, it depends the region or the place or the temporary. For example, this kind of flower that I told you, Gasparito flower, in northern Veracruz start in January. Middle Veracruz start in spring, and South Veracruz start in August, something like that. So
the flavor is
we
different,
have
no?
flowers.
Between the regions, I would imagine, no? Lesterloon, no? Tiene una diferencia en
Yes.
sabor, no? Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And we have a lot of different kinds of flowers. For example, we have Erythrina americana, pero también tenemos also have Erythrina forsterski in the Tuxtlas. It's a similar flower that we call Gasparito. So we have different flavors.
They're red and very succulent. So let's talk a little bit about the restaurant. Because
Yeah, and I think in that same vein, Mom, let's talk about how do you cook the flowers? You know, do you use them
that's
as
a
a
good
garnish?
idea.
Yeah, do you use them as a garnish? Do you cook with them? Do you cook them very, very softly so they don't lose their potencia? Like, you know, let's talk a little bit of how do you use the flowers in cuisine and in your restaurant?
Yeah. There's something important that I want to explain before. For example, what eat flowers means. That's important. So in the ancient Mexico, flora represents life, death, gods, creation, man, the language, poetry, art, friendship, lordship, captive in war, heaven, earth, the heart, even a calendaric sign. So it accompanied the man from his birth to his death. Yeah, evidently the flower was one of the basic elements in the pre-Hispanic symbolic communication as a synonym for precious. So when we decide to eat flowers, we didn't only as a physiological need. Yeah, we did because it represents our way of understanding the world, the way we eat the world. So that's very important. Yeah. So eat flowers is not only like what kind of flower we're going to eat today.
But it represents
eat flowers.
it represents birth. It's the female. It really, you know, the female is the flower. It's where life is given. And you think about it symbolically, like you just said beautifully, Lesterloon. It's that. No, Mom? It's the female is the flower. It's so beautiful, the analogy. You
He's
know?
very eloquent. You know, it's a
Yes.
pleasure for me to have been able to invite Lesterloon because he is a new generation of chefs in Mexico who are really dedicated to doing cooking responsibly. You know, sustaining the environment, and you know,
Thank you,
and
Sarah.
it's just wonderful. not only is that, but he's a poet. Read us the dedication in your book. Read it in Spanish to the woman.
And we'll translate because it's beautiful. Please, please. Ahí
Es
traducimos, mi
a
rey, por
la
favor.
a la mujer que me alimentó con las flores que crecían en el jardín.
It's beautiful. But, to
Translate.
the woman who gave me nutrition, who cooked for me with the flowers in our garden.
In our garden, exactly.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's my mom.
Wow.
That was your
Isn't
mom?
that beautiful?
It's like illusions.
Yeah, and
no?
you think about how much it takes to take care of a flower, right? In times of cold and weather and all these different sort of natural elements that can either have a flower grow and sustain itself and proliferate, or it could die. So you really have to love
Yeah.
that flower.
Well, yeah,
And you
like
have to care
I
for it,
have
you
the
know?
Little Prince.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have two beautiful stories about edible flowers in Veracruz. I think they are very important to understand. The first one, an anthropologist traveled when he was very young to a mountainous area with a population that is still mostly indigenous, called Songolica. It's a Nahua people. So there, he stayed in a house of an important family. One morning, he was having a breakfast, and a young man sat down opposite him. And the young man began to eat a huge plate with flowers. These flowers are called yolosochi, which mean heart flowers. It's yolo, heart, and xochitl, flower. Flores del corazón, flores de corazón. That's a beautiful word. His first thought was the people who live here are so poor and they need to eat flowers to survive. That's a strong thought, you know? It's like poor people, poor people, poor people. So he couldn't be more wrong. The young man was getting ready because the next day he was going to get married. He was eating flowers to prepare. The flowers have a deep meaning of fertilization. So he was preparing himself, yeah, to make babies. So that's eat flowers in Mexico mean.
I love it. That's so beautiful.
So,
Que todo
so we have a lot of edible flower salads.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's, the pizza restaurant, is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. And of course, there's the 2 Michelin-starred Blanca tucked away in the garden for truly daring diners. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City and now in Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
So, Jeff, how do you use them in your restaurant? So, are there certain ones you make sopa, or do you make some that are just raw in a salad? Like, how do you use some of those flowers, those edible flowers?
It depends. It depends the flower.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, how about the
Yeah.
gasparitos? How do you make gasparitos?
Yeah, for example, gasparitos, it's a flower that that has an infinity of recipes. For example, have salads, hot broths, hard soaps, stuffed chilies that are delicious, chili sauce, tamales, stew, moles, dessert, and many
But do
others.
you boil them
Uh,
first?
that's
Let's say you get home with your cascaritos. You wash them and then put them away, or cook them right away. And
yeah.
and
I think there are three ways to cook flowers. I put in my book, or I wrote in my book. The first one, boiled. Yeah, uh, it's
Dinos en
we
español,
eat
mi rey.
this kind of
Yeah, yeah,
flowers.
yeah. ¿No?
We eat this kind of flowers por la textura,
Sí.
porque son
Yeah.
carnosas.
they
Yeah,
make like patties, like
uh,
hamburger patties of those cascaritos.
yeah, it's like quelites. Yeah, it's the same meaning of quelites in the Mexican cuisine. So we eat quelites. Why? Yes, a little bit for the flavor, but commonly because they are carnosas.
Yeah.
So
And how about the isote?
like meat,
Yeah.
like meat. So we have the second one, the flowers to give color. Yeah, there are three or four flowers that used to color dishes.
Yeah. Oh, really? Like what?
Yeah, like for example, something called sangre de Cristo. Yeah, it's a little flower. It's like orange, an orange flower, and put the dishes with a color like violet. Yeah, that's a wonderful. For example, for ciruela, dulce de ciruelas. Yeah, it's a dessert. We use this kind of flower to give that violet color.
Yeah, so the ciruela is like prune or plum, plum, and you would use that to kind of exacerbate or make it more beautiful and colorful, no?
The
With the
decorator.
flowers.
Yeah.
So it
And
can be a side component to enhance.
There's also
Yeah, but
a
it's
very famous broth, beverage, the bupu.
Yeah, that is the
Yachachi.
the other way to use the flowers in the kitchen. It's the flower uh, for the aroma. Yeah,
It's a beautifully smelling orchid.
yeah, it's used to flavor beverage such atoles, chocolate, and horchata. There are a lot of beverage flavored with flowers. For example, I have two favorite flowers. One of them called Mayflower, Flor de Mayo, or two, Suchil flower. It's like Flor de Suchil. That's a beautiful word in Spanish because proviene del náhuatl flor. Xochitl means flower.
Like
No?
cempasúchil.
Xochitl means flower.
Like
So in Spanish, it's something like flower,
oh,
flor de Xochitl.
yeah.
It's something beautiful. And the other one, the isote flower. Yeah, their scientific names are Plumeria rubra and Yucca guatemalensis in that order. The first one is used to flower beverage such as atoles or chocolates or chata. It has a beautiful aroma like vanilla. Yeah, and I love that.
And they make a mole with that.
Yeah, and vupu that you say, also vupu. It's a kind of beverage with atole, white atole, corn atole, and after something like espuma
Broth.
with
Froth, yeah.
chocolate or cacao and a little bit of
Achiote.
piloncillo and a lot of Plumeria rubra flower.
Wow.
Or
So we're talking about
flower.
chile atoles, which is is so veracruzano, and it really defines it, right, Mom? How about
Yeah.
really quickly for a
It's-
chile
it's-
atole? It's a corn
It's a
based broth.
corn-based stew. It's a corn
Yeah,
stew. Let's put it
yeah,
that way.
cornstarch. Yeah, yeah,
Corn-based
Yeah.
stew.
yeah, with broth. Yeah, and
And
And there are a lot of chilatoles with edible
yes,
flowers.
absolutely.
A lot
and
of.
where can people get your book? I mean, do you have it so that people can pay you to download it? 'Cause
And
maybe you
and
should.
also with that same thing in mind, Mom, are you helping get some of those edible flowers to other parts of Mexico and also into the States? How do people procure those? Are they going to get them dried? Are they going to get them frozen and shipped to them? Like, how can people start to cook with them,
In the United
even if
States.
we're not in Veracruz? So we can expand that understanding. You know.
Well, the isote will be
Well,
available in Arizona for sure.
Hmm.
yeah, I'll try to explain. Um, I think with the scientific names, people in USA could maybe find the flowers, maybe. Okay, but there is something very important. Uh, when we talking about edible flowers here in Veracruz or here in Mexico, we're not talking about some ingredient. Okay? Uh, there are not something that you can buy. Yeah, they are talking about the environment. Yeah, a lot of flowers are trees like a Gasparito flower or Isote flower. So you can find alrededor de la ciudad en las fincas where you have, how can I say finca de café in English?
Coffee plantations.
Yeah, a coffee plantation around Jalapa, for example. We are talking about environment, not not something that you can buy at supermercado. So if you want to cook with this kind of flowers, you can looking for with the scientific names. I'm uh, seguramente, no, they will find there in the Union in the USA.
Is anybody commercializing them?
No, for example, I heard or somebody told me that Salvadorian people in LA find the isote flowers in the desert and he las vende en el mercado.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, in
That,
Arizona too.
yeah, that's beautiful because there are a lot of
Desert.
isote flowers in the USA, but nobody knows how can I eat.
How do you use them?
Yeah, yeah, that. So that's beautiful because Salvadorian people arrive and start to use them.
Let me ask you, just like, would you take, like, let's say a garlic clove, some sliced onions, cook it a little bit, add the flowers, and add a stock, or add it to zucchini, let's say, or whatever. Is that the way you would start a recipe?
I think it'd be great to do a quesadilla.
Ah, yeah,
Like
that'd be.
with rajas, no? Like a little bit of onion, some roasted poblano, and then a beautiful array of flour and put in a beautiful quesadilla, no? Would
That
be
was a
like
great
something
idea,
that easy
honey.
for a starter, no?
That's a great idea, honey.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you've done it, chef. I mean, I'm not, so, but so.
Yeah. Blossom squash has a lot of recipes too.
Recipes.
Yeah, recipes. Yeah, like salads, sprouts, soup, stuffed chilies, stuffed chilies.
But that's
So
interesting that
that's
you
one.
say that. If you look, so I work with Gordon Ramsay, and Mr. Chef, and all of his
Yes.
food at his 3-star Michelin restaurant is decorated with flowers. If you look at it, some brotas, right? Or they're derivatives of the parsley or the beet root or whatever it is, and those flowers are so beautiful, and they end up being the garnish on a lot of these beautiful Michelin star restaurants. And they're flowers, Papa. Lesterloon, they're
Yes.
flowers, and they're being garnished all over the world. And now people are starting to understand that that's in essence the essence of that herb or whatever the vegetable is. It starts with the flower, right? Or
Yeah.
the root within the flower. So it's interesting to
Yeah.
see that, because look at any Michelin guide and trust me, it's going to be garnished with flowers. So it's interesting to see where we're going.
How about desserts
Yeah.
with the flowers? Do you make any desserts with the flowers?
Yes. For example, isote flower has a something called dulce de isote.
Mm-hmm.
That's very simple. You boil isote flour with something of syrup, and you can add vanilla or how can I say canela. So that's a wonderful
You
dessert.
serve it with ice cream, maybe over ice cream?
Yes, or over a tart.
Oh, that would be great. So I wonder if they use them in ice creams.
Yes, for example, rose
Oh,
Oh,
rose.
yeah.
Yeah,
roses
yeah,
flowers.
rose. Absolutely. And we haven't talked about that. I think that's interesting. That rosa is used so much. I think you talk about, the Persian Empire and all of that, to them using, rose as this beautiful sort of fragrant element from savory to, I mean, let's talk about the famous dish, the quail with rose petal sauce and like
Right.
water for chocolate. No?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that might be the most famous use of flowers, no? If you think about how it put it on the map, no, Mom? No, Lesterloon?
Yes, that's a good.
The rose petal sauce so.
It gets you all aflame. I
Absolutely.
mean, I think that is the recipe that is most cooked on Valentine's Day in Mexican restaurants in the United States. Yeah. Just bring out that recipe and
I think the roses have the same meaning of fertilization. So, with the European civilization
yeah, crystallize.
that transfers, that arrived to Mexico.
And then when you're in Spain, all the crystallized violets and all
Yes,
the things that taste of violets, that's fantastic. So it's cooking with flowers is more generalized than we realize. There are all sorts of flower products that we don't think of, as being, cooking with flowers.
hmm
It would be fun to
no,
explore the roses in Mexican food.
yes. I think when we start to eat another flowers, different that the flowers that I have here in Mexico, also we uh, we start to understand how another people eat flowers. That's very important because the meaning of flower here or eating flowers here in Mexico in the pre-Hispanic times is something like fertilization, yeah,
Yeah.
something like uh, all that I talked.
But here's the
Um,
question. Do you have a garden? And what are the flowers that you grow at your house or your restaurant? Because
uh,
everybody wants to
of
know.
course,
Okay, so what is
of
it
course, suchil flower.
that the grand chef has? Yeah?
I have suchil flower, blossom squash, and isote. I love isote. I have isote around my garden. I love
So
it.
right.
And flor de suchil is suchil flower because it's a this kind of flower you could find her in cemeteries. Yeah,
Cempasúchil,
that's right, cemeteries.
yeah.
Yeah, because there are idea around the flower that the flower feed the soul.
So
So here in Veracruz, there are a lot of flowers around the cemeteries.
Here, there, and
To
everywhere.
feed the souls of our dead. That's wonderful. I think the second one, for example, the second one, beautiful story that I learned here in Veracruz is in a region called Soteapan. Yeah, the Sotque Popoluca populations have a tradition when a baby dies, a little baby dies, a godfather must be found. So this godfather should take the baby to the church, sprinkling holy water on his head, and put a yellow flower called puchmaya in his mouth. Puchmaya means in Popoluca, puch, yellow, and moya, flower. So it's yellow flower. So this godfather put puchmaya in his mouth to be fit in the next life.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the reason because the Popolucas put a flower in the mouth. So we can see that enormous meaning that the flowers have to feed the soul. Yeah, that's the same meaning because vamos a encontrar
So we will find,
las flores sembradas alrededor de los cementerios para que alimenten las flores a las almas de nuestros difuntos.
And how do you, besides feeding the souls, how do you cook with them at your restaurant?
Yes, with this kind of flour, I make horchatas.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, there are in Alvarado something called horchata de flor de suchi.
Oh my gosh!
It's a rice horchata with
marigolds,
suchil flowers.
I think those two would be great in quesadillas, no? Sauteed.
Yeah, no, because this kind of flour, yes, this kind of flour is to aroma.
Oh.
Yeah, have a lot of aroma.
Yeah.
It's not
so it's not a marigold.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds good.
It's not like elite.
Uh-huh.
It's
so you wouldn't eat it in a salad, in other words.
Yes, for example, a salad.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. So, Lesterloon, can you tell all of our listeners and everyone that supports Heritage Radio Network how to get in contact with you and be able to continue this conversation about cooking with flowers in Mexican cuisine? Because I think that's very important. Because this, like we always say on Cooking in Mexican from A to Z on HRN, that we want this conversation to keep going. And your mission will not end. It just only grows bigger. So how can people reach out to you?
I have my email. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's lesterloonsans at gmail.com.
We have to hear the origin of his name.
Yes, Lesterloon Sans. And also Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Mm-hmm. I'm like Lesterloon Sans.
I love it.
So if the book is available to download for free, only in Spanish, by the way, you can write me an email or message to my social networks, and I'll give you.
Awesome. And real quick before we say goodbye, tell us about your name, because I don't, my name's Aron. my twin brother's named Rodrigo, but Lesterloon is not the common name that you just find in the Jose or the Juan caliber vocabulary. So we would like to learn a little bit about that, please.
It's not a great story. My mom knew a French teacher whose name was that, Lesterloon. Also, many years ago, when I was studying French, I have a French teacher who told me that she knew a town in England named like that, Lesterloon. She told me maybe It is a name that appeared on the border between France and England, because Leicester is extremely England. So that's all I know.
How your mother found it, I don't know. From the French teacher. We haven't
From
really
the
talked
French
about
teacher.
your restaurant too much, but it's but Jalapa's a really good place to go eat because most people do not go to Veracruz. We don't have that many tourists in Veracruz. But
Yes.
but the thing is that it's wonderful that you have this great restaurant in Jalapa.
And we have our beautiful friend, La Doña Raquel Torres, right?
Yeah,
From
that's how
La
I met her.
Chorrería de Recuerdo, the iconic place. I've been, and I've spent time with Raquel, obviously, as my mom has. And go ahead, I'm sorry, Mom.
No, that's how I met. That's how I met Lesterloon.
Mm-hmm.
Through
To
Raquel.
Raquel, yeah.
Yeah, and she told me. She said, "No, you should contact him because his book on flowers is much better than mine." So anyway, what a treat it has been to see you again, and hopefully we'll put up the address to your restaurant and everything, so that when people do go to Veracruz, they can go visit you, and you can let us know what kind of things you're doing that people can partake of.
And we'll come up there and cook with you when we have the chance, okay? My mom and I, okay? And your beautiful restaurant, Mucarra, and it's in Jalapa. It is, it's a magical place. If you've never been to Jalapa, Veracruz, you're missing out. It's one of the most special places I've ever visited in my life. The mercados, the people, the food.
The museum,
everything. You have not seen Mexico till you've been to Veracruz, and especially Jalapa. And hopefully you come and visit Lesterloon at his restaurant, Mucarra, and just learn from him, because it's just a magical place in Mexico that you've never seen. Forget all the tourist places. This is where you want to go if you want to learn about real Mexico. And it's indigenous and African influences and all of that good stuff. Veracruz was considered sort of the Switzerland of Mexico, where all these different indigenous people came, to find peace and solitude. So anyway, we are just beyond grateful. Estamos súper agradecidos por tu presencia, mi rey. Eres un genio, eres un lujo, eres un tesoro de todo. Y muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros. And thank you for taking time. And of course, please look up more information on Cooking in Mexico from A to Z on Heritage Radio Network. And I'm your host, Aaron Sanchez.
And I'm Sarela Martinez.
And we had the pleasure of having Lesterloon Sanchez Trinidad visiting with us today. So we hope to see you soon. Y hasta luego. Y nos vemos pronto. Cooking in Mexican from A to Z is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Una más en mis entrañas.